the Japanese Prime Minister who just spoke said that he hopes that Shinzo Abe survives this attack, and added that doctors are doing everything that they possibly can to save Shinzo Abe. We are covering the story live from the ground as well. Let's see if we can cut across to NHK, the broadcaster in Japan, for just a few minutes. They have eyewitnesses speaking there. If we can cut across for just a few seconds, please.
The weaker yen will have an impact on imported foods that are staples in everyone's home, like olive oil. It frightens me to think that cheese and pasta will become more expensive.
So we'll go back to that. But let's put out the pictures as they came into the newsrooms. These are pictures that were captured by people who were there in Nara Prefecture in Japan when the attack took place this morning. Let's put out the pictures of how the attack happened. He was on stage speaking to people in Nara Prefecture. Let's put out the videos of the different sequences. So you had Shinzo Abe speaking to people, and in the videos that came in, you can see that there was firing from behind. Some of the eyewitnesses putting it at 3 meters behind him. He was shot at from 3 meters behind and from a close range, after which he collapsed, suffered a cardiac arrest. The other pictures that came in show that the security of Shinzo Abe finding it extremely difficult to contain the attacker in those critical moments. They tried to stop him, but even before they could react or pin him down, he had opened fire in what seems like a homemade weapon, according to the Japanese media. He was treated on the site and later rushed in an air ambulance to one of the hospitals there, and that's the latest breaking news update that we have as of this minute. Okay, Jitendra Ojha is also joining us on this broadcast. Jitendra Ojha is a strategic affairs expert as well. Jitendra Ojha, going by the reports that we have so far, it appears he's in a very critical situation. Jitendra Ojha is a geopolitical and security analyst. Jitendra Ojha, how do you view this attack this morning?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, this is a very serious thing. Reason being, Shinzo Abe has been the longest serving Japanese Prime Minister #1, and I don't think any other politician or any other Prime Minister of Japan had enjoyed this kind of global credibility and acceptability. Even domestically, you see, he has the kind of acceptability that he was able to pull together everyone. Prior to him, not a single Prime Minister was able to complete their tenure, and the kind of achievement he had, it was completely incomparable. And he was the architect of quadrilateral dialogues. During his first tenure, he came out with this idea, and he had constantly been telling Americans also that leadership in this part of the world has to be taken care of. The mantle has to be worn by India. India is a natural leader, and he played a very important role in bringing India and Australia together, along with the United States. And the kind of deterrence he was able to create against Chinese expansionism, not only vis-a-vis Japan, but otherwise, I think that was remarkable. And even after stepping out from the post of Prime Minister, I feel that he has been very acceptable within Japan as well as outside. From it's going to be a big setback to democratic forces. It is going to be a setback for Japan because of health conditions, he was not able to handle responsibility. But at the same time, he was being consulted by everyone. He was a kind of rallying point within Japan as well as for the international community who were talking about, stability and security in the Indo-Pacific region. So he was not simply a prime minister per se. I would say he was one of the top global statesmen of our time. So at this point of time, a threat like this is very worrying. We can only speculate who could be people behind it, but we have to wait until we get to know facts. This is what I would say.
Yes. And going by the details that we have with us so far, the motive, the nearest we've come to it is from a report that has been just published in NHK, and the investigators reportedly have said that Yamagami, now identified as the attacker, seen in the pictures being pinned down by the police in Nara Prefecture, has said that he was dissatisfied. He was dissatisfied with Shinzo Abe and hence opened fire. It's sent shockwaves around the world in a society that is extremely peace-loving, and this particular incident, in fact, tells you one of the story of one of the dangers of course, radicalization. And before we get into any of that, we'll wait for what the investigators have to say. The Prime Minister himself ruled out, for the moment at least, any political motive, even though it came 2 days before the outcome of the campaign. But I'd like to go back to Sanjay. Sanjay, if you can also throw a little light on how Shinzo Abe has been a great friend of India, and the kind of relationship that he shared with the Prime Minister, especially every time they met, they've shared some great moments. Yeah, Jitendra, you can take that question. Jitendra.
Yes, definitely. I would say Prime Minister Modi has been a very popular leader. We never had this kind of decisive leader with such a kind of mandate. So as far as this entire region is concerned, Shinzo Abe was able to appreciate the role that India could play, and especially under Prime Minister Modi. So both of them had a kind of personal chemistry which was very remarkable. Both believed that issues in this part of the world had to be dealt with locally. No doubt that the United States of America is the most powerful democracy, and as leader of democratic nations, America had an obligation, but at the same time they were very clear that this region required indigenous leadership, and this region has to be on the forefront as far as stability and security was concerned. So to that extent, I would feel that not only private moments, but many a times visiting delegations of third countries, whenever they have gone under the tenure of Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, they have been highlighting deep cultural links India and Japan have shared, especially through Buddhism. Buddhism is one bond, and not only this, yoga and other issues they have been talking about. So this cultural part also he has been emphasizing that India and Japan, they share a relationship which goes back to a few millennia or older than that. And
Yes.
In Japanese values, the role Buddhism has played and Indian influence had played, there has been a new thrust in this area which was not visible earlier, and they were only talking about very indigenous kind of Japanese values or Japanese nationalism. So he took Indo-Japan relationship to an entirely different level, and of course Prime Minister Modi's international image, his international acceptability, all this had a role. And I think that, always he had been, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has always been highlighting and emphasizing the role of India, and especially need for Indian leadership in this part of the world as far as open states and democracies were concerned. So to that extent, I think he was a great friend of India. We never ever had this kind of relationship of trust and goodwill that Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Shinzo Abe were able to build. So that was remarkable by all standards.